Welcome to our YouTube channel dedicated to military affairs in Ukraine. Explore the latest updates, in-depth analysis, and captivating stories about the Ukrainian armed forces. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button to support our channel. Join our YouTube channel to delve into the world of Ukrainian military. From exclusive interviews with military experts to on-the-ground coverage of defense events, we bring you comprehensive insights. Subscribe and show your support by liking our videos. Looking for an authoritative source on military matters in Ukraine? Subscribe to our YouTube channel for regular updates, informative videos, and engaging discussions. Hit the subscribe and like buttons to stay connected with the latest in Ukrainian military affairs.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're watching from. Welcome to this edition of the Scott Ritter Show. As we speak, the Ukrainian counteroffensive, long awaited, long anticipated, is entering its second week. And if one is to take the reports from the front line seriously, from the Ukrainian perspective, they're apparently enjoying some success. There appears to be an opportunity for Ukraine to achieve its military objectives. If you take reporting from the Russian side, however, Ukrainian forces have failed to reach even the first line of defenses and are suffering horrific casualties, and the counteroffensive is stalled and failing and doomed to fail. The disparity between the reporting I think highlights what we're going to talk about on this episode, which is information warfare and the importance of getting accurate information, relevant information, and complete information when it comes to fully and honestly understanding what's transpiring in the special military operation today. And to do this, I couldn't think of a better guest than the one that we have today. Yevgeny Podubny, a extremely well-regarded Russian war correspondent, joins us today, and I want to welcome you, Yevgeny. Thank you for taking time to talk to me and to talk to this audience. I'd just like to start off. You're a war correspondent. What's your take about what's happening with these Ukrainian counteroffensive that's taking place today?
Good day, Scott. It seems to me that at the beginning of the program, you quite described in detail the process. The adversary, the forces of Ukraine, are trying to break several spots, the Russian defense line, and they are trying to do that with no success. It can be seen from the action of the adversary. I'm speaking about the progress. When the counteroffensive started, the active stage of this counteroffensive, because the counteroffensive has been going on for a long time, and the forces of Ukraine over several months have been trying to see the weak spots, the weak points in the Russian defense line in order to plan and muster the action to break the front line. According to the management of the Ukrainian forces, there was a thorough plan, and then the active stage started, which led to serious loss not only in the people but in the armor and equipment, and with no success, with no tangible success, with no big area taken, with no serious damage to the Russian group of forces and the means in the special military area. Why is it happening so? What was the reason for that? So we can give three major points. The adversary overestimated its own forces and the potential of military equipment and weapons from the West. even though there was a huge burden on the groups equipped with the Western weapons and prepared in the Western countries. So the adversary demonstrated that this combination with the sufficient number of troops, in particular spot of the area, was enough to break the Russian front line, but it turned out that it was not the case. Even at the stage of preparing for attack, the Russian intelligence saw the groups of the army, the battalion groups, the divisions, and very often even the adversary couldn't even reach the first line. So the forces were destroyed even remotely from the defense line. The second very important point and the second important factor which says that the potential of the Western weapon systems were estimated is the fact that the Western equipment and the Western weapons burn like the Soviet equipment burns, like Ukrainian equipment burns. So when there is a serious planned and modern intelligence means and equipment used, so it burns like every other equipment. And when there is a so the tanks turn into something burning on the battlefield. The infantry fighting vehicles of American and the British production has no sufficient armory and the system of protection to fend off the strike against modern anti-tank missile launcher systems and the system of fight management, fight control, the battle control with the modern radio-electronic warfare and loses its potential. It is important to understand that the adversary tried to during the first days of their active counteroffensive, tried to do the following thing. They tried to get the competitive edge over using this radio-electronic warfare, which was supposed to destroy the Russian connection. Unfortunately, there are some technical problems. So the connection to UAVs and between different groups didn't happen. So that led to no success. Where this radio-electronic warfare really succeeded, there were some alternative ways of control and connection, and the adversary was not physically able to destroy. This is particular secure satellite connection and so on and so forth. So the adversary didn't manage to paralyze the control and management of the troops, of the Russian troops. And so that's how the problems were suffered by the Ukrainian forces, which led to no result, to serious losses on the battlefield. Let's call them reputation losses and reputation damage when it comes to the producers of Western equipment and Western weapon systems. Undoubtedly, Germany, France, the United States expected that tanks, Leopard or Abrams tanks, Bradley vehicles would be able to provide for the required interconnection level of control connection, which was sufficient and which was required for this fast action, but that didn't happen. So the adversary, over a period of time, for such very active counteroffensive, is losing people, is losing weapons. So the offensive potential is diminishing very rapidly, whereas the Ukrainian forces haven't managed to break through the first defense line. We have a multi-dimensional, multi-tier defense line, the first, the second, the third, the fourth tier, well-prepared positions which cannot be broken very easily. Even everything is successful when there are no difficulties. But in the current situation, under the circumstances, we see serious difficulties in planning, in organizing the situation on the battlefield, and in motivation of the troops, as under any circumstances, even when there is some success, there are some losses and motivation goes down. But when there are serious organizational problems, so that leads to catastrophic implications, and that has played its own role, its huge role in the lack of success by the Ukrainian forces. Right now, from my standpoint, the Ukrainian regime is trying to understand whether they will have enough forces in reserved forces which had been prepared for the counteroffensive to break the sustainability of those Russian groups and divisions which are located on the front line. And Kiev regime has a dilemma between the venture activity, which may lead to the destruction of the reserved forces, and less aggressive, let's say, action, which, as a result, would lead to no result. And I'm going to explain to you why the first is a venture one. The Kiev regime understands that after Ukrainian forces may suffer serious losses and the potential of the reserve prepared within several months is by the whole collective West. I'm not talking only about the equipment and military systems. I'm talking about fuel, about ammunition. The whole set of the events was very complicated. Ukraine will not have enough forces and means to fend off Russian counteroffensive, and so the Ukrainian regime faces a serious dilemma. But due to political and military reasons, the adversary cannot afford no results on the battlefield. And right now, so the only result of the counteroffensive of the Ukraine is zero, is absolutely zero. Even though there are some tactical successes on separate areas, they cannot even stay with this success and let alone develop in this success. Therefore, we see that it might lead us to the situation and purely prepared and purely executed offensive together with the NATO, the Kiev regime may find itself not in a catastrophic situation for the Ukrainian forces, but it may lead to serious weakening of the forces due to very active reduction in the reserve, in diminishing potential of those forces, which we can see on the battlefield right now.
Well, thank you very much for that, very detailed and, I mean, accurate, if you're Ukrainian or a Western supporter of Ukraine, depressing report from the field. You know, what's interesting is that what you have just said is starting to be echoed in mainstream Western media. We start to see reports in the New York Times, in the Washington Post, in the Wall Street Journal that mirror what you just said, the reality. I think what this highlights is the inadequacy of the reporting that has been taking place up until this counteroffensive on the part of your counterparts in the West. American journalists, British journalists, Ukrainian journalists who have allowed themselves to be deceived and to report inaccurately about both Ukrainian capabilities and Russian capabilities. What I want to ask you is, from the perspective of a Russian journalist, have the Russian successes taken you by surprise? Were you surprised by the performance of the Russian troops? Leading up to this counteroffensive, there was a lot of questions, even in Russian media, about whether or not the mobilized forces would perform well in combat, whether or not their training was sufficient, their equipment was sufficient, their morale was sufficient, whether or not Russian leadership was capable of coordinating artillery and air defense. Many people question whether or not Russia could, in fact, defend itself from the kind of attack that Ukraine has put forward. Were you surprised, or did you expect this outcome?
You know, for me, it was not a surprise at all. The losses and the lack of success of adversary on the front line. It is worth mentioning that the only concern and the whole concern